It's June 7th, 2021. Imagine the humid South Carolina night suddenly shattered by a frantic 911 call. On the line, prominent attorney Alex Murdaugh, his voice supposedly trembling with horror. He says he's found an unimaginable scene of carnage at his family's sprawling hunting estate. His wife Maggie and their youngest son Paul brutally murdered. That one call wasn't just the start of a horrific double homicide investigation. It was the first thread pulled, unraveling a powerful, century-old dynasty. It exposed a dark underbelly of alleged corruption, addiction, and secrets that would grip the entire nation. And it left everyone asking how much more horror was hiding beneath the polished, genteel surface of the Low Country. This is the full timeline of a case that shattered illusions and still echoes with unanswered questions. So to really get why these murders sent such shockwaves, you first need to understand who the Murdaughs were. For over 100 years, the name Murdaugh was law and power in South Carolina's 14th Judicial Circuit. This area was so under their thumb, people just called it Murdaugh country. Think about it. 3 generations of Murdaugh men, Randolph Sr., Randolph Buster Jr., and Randolph III, were the chief prosecutor for 5 counties, one after the other, from 1920 all the way to 2006. They basically were the law, and it wasn't just public power. Randolph Murdaugh Sr. also started a private law firm, Parker Law Group, you might know it by its old longer name PMPED, that raked in money from personal injury cases. This just added to their already massive wealth and influence. You've probably seen the family photos and home videos. They paint this picture of a perfect Southern life, right? Holidays, boating trips, laughter filling their huge properties. Now looking back, it's all pretty grimly ironic. Maggie, who was 52, seemed like a devoted mom. Paul, 22, loved the outdoors, though he'd had his own share of recent trouble. On the surface, they were this respected, powerful family, living the American dream. But behind closed doors, cracks were showing, long-held secrets were starting to bubble up. In fact, it's come out that just weeks before she was murdered, Maggie was apparently thinking about leaving Alex and had even talked to a divorce lawyer. So, let's go back to that Monday evening, June 7th, 2021. Alex Murdaugh tells the authorities he'd been visiting his sick mother and his father. He claims he got back to their huge 1,700-acre estate, Moselle, in Islandton, just after 10 p.m. And that's when he says he found a horrific scene at the dog kennels on the property. His 911 call came in at 10:07 p.m. He sounded anguished, telling the dispatcher his wife and son had been shot. When the police showed up, they found something truly disturbing. Even seasoned investigators were shaken. Maggie Murdaugh had been shot multiple times with a rifle. Paul Murdaugh also shot multiple times, but with a shotgun. The sheer brutality was obvious. And the fact that 2 different weapons were used, that immediately raised some complicated questions. Those first few hours of the investigation were tough. It was raining, which is never good for a crime scene. Plus, in a move that people would later heavily criticize, family and friends were apparently allowed to walk through the area. Think about that, potentially trampling all over crucial evidence. Section 3. The investigation begins. Cracks in the alibi. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLED, jumped in to lead the investigation pretty quickly. And right from the get-go, even though they didn't say it publicly for a while, Alex Murdaugh was on their radar as a person of interest. His alibi, that he was visiting his mom, came under close watch. But then a crucial piece of evidence popped up, and it completely blew his story about not being at the kennels earlier that evening out of the water. You see, they found a video on Paul Murdaugh's cell phone. It was recorded at 8:44 p.m., just minutes before they think the murders happened. Paul was apparently filming a dog's tail to show a friend, but in the background, you could hear voices. Paul, Maggie, and, this is the kicker, Alex Murdaugh. This put Alex right there at the murder scene, just before it all went down. And that flatly contradicted what he first told investigators about being with his mother. This became a huge piece of the prosecution's case. So now they had a timeline. Paul's video at 8:44 p.m. and Alex's 911 call at 10:07 p.m. What happened in those 102 minutes? That was the big mystery. Even right after the murders, weird things started happening. Just a few weeks later, in June 2021, Alex Murdaugh announced a $100,000 reward for any info that led to an arrest and conviction. His attorney, Jim Griffin, said this was just to set up a way to handle tips because SLED doesn't usually do rewards, but had agreed to pass on any information they got. Still, it struck some as a bit odd. While Saled was digging into the double homicide, something else started to unravel. A much bigger, darker story of crime, with Alex Murdaugh right in the middle of it. It turned out that for years, Alex had been living a secret life, committing massive financial fraud. We're talking about embezzling millions of dollars from his own law firm, his partners, and, worst of all, from his vulnerable clients. Many of these folks were disadvantaged people who trusted him with their injury settlements. By June 2025, Alex Murdaugh was looking at a mind-blowing 102 grand jury criminal charges and 19 indictments for all these financial crimes plus drug offenses. The heat was definitely on Alex from all sides. His law firm had actually confronted him about missing money on the exact day of the murders. He was also staring down lawsuits, one of which was tied to that awful 2019 boat crash involving his son Paul. 19-year-old Mallory Beach died in that crash, and Paul was allegedly drunk at the helm. That lawsuit was digging into Alex's finances, and it threatened to blow his whole house of cards apart. Later on, prosecutors would argue that all this financial desperation was the motive for the murders. Their theory? Alex, about to be exposed and ruined, killed Maggie and Paul in a twisted attempt to create a distraction. He hoped it would make people feel sorry for him, buy him some time, and shift the focus away from his crumbling empire of lies. His whole carefully built world was falling apart. Then, things got even weirder. On September 4th, 2021, just 3 months after the murders, Alex Murdaugh called 911 again. This time, he claimed he'd been shot in the head during a roadside ambush while changing a tire, but his injuries? Barely a scratch. The story unraveled fast. A few days later, Alex confessed. He'd set up the whole thing himself. He'd gotten help from a distant cousin, Curtis Eddie Smith, who was also an alleged drug dealer. Alex said it was supposed to be an assisted suicide attempt. Why? So his surviving son, Buster, could collect on a $10 million life insurance policy. Smith eventually got charged for his part in it. Alex also announced he was checking into rehab for a long-term opioid addiction, blaming it for his bad choices and what he called paranoid thinking. This whole bizarre episode just made people even more suspicious of Alex. I mean, it showed he was willing to cook up some pretty elaborate and violent deceptions. If he could stage his own shooting, what else could he do? By October 2021, SLED officially named Alex Murdaugh a person of interest in Maggie and Paul's murders. The walls were closing in. More and more pieces started to click into place for the investigators. Cell phone data, information from his car, surveillance footage. It all helped them build a detailed timeline of where Alex was and what he was doing on June 7th. And that financial crimes investigation? It was speeding up too, showing just how incredibly widespread his alleged thefts really were. Then on July 14th, 2022, over a year after the murders, it finally happened. A Colleton County grand jury indicted Alex Murdaugh on 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of having a weapon while committing a violent crime for Maggie and Paul's deaths. The once prominent lawyer, the heir to a legal dynasty, was now officially accused of wiping out his own family. When you think about the kind of person who could do something like this, it's chilling. Experts often talk about themes of power, control, and just overwhelming desperation. In Murdaugh's situation, with his financial world about to implode and decades of lies on the verge of being exposed, it kind of fits the pattern of what they call self-preserving offenders. These are people who do terrible things when their status and everything they built is about to be destroyed. His carefully crafted image was about to be completely shattered. Alex Murdaugh's trial kicked off on January 23, 2023, in Walterboro, South Carolina. And let me tell you, it quickly turned into a national obsession. For 6 intense weeks, the prosecution, led by Creighton Waters, laid out their case. They painted a picture of Alex Murdaugh as a master manipulator, a liar who killed his wife and son to dodge the fallout from his financial mess. They brought out that crucial cell phone video showing Alex at the kennels just minutes before the murders. They spelled out all the financial pressure he was under. They hammered home all the lies he told investigators. They had witnesses like his former law partners, clients he'd ripped off, and even some of his own family members. Maggie's sister, Marion Proctor, took the stand and talked about the state of the Murdaugh's marriage. Now the defense, led by Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin, went on the attack. They questioned how the crime scene was handled, pointing to the rain and all those unauthorized people wandering around. They argued SLED had tunnel vision, zeroing in on Alex from day one and not looking at any other possibilities. They really stressed that there was no direct physical evidence, like the murder weapons, which, by the way, have never been found, directly tying Alex to the shootings. Then, in a pretty stunning move, Alex Murdaugh himself took the stand. He owned up to his massive financial crimes, admitted he'd stolen millions. He admitted to his opioid addiction. And, importantly, he admitted he'd lied to investigators about where he was on the night of the murders. He blamed that on paranoia from his drug use. But, and this is a big but, he absolutely denied killing Maggie and Paul. He was crying on the stand saying, "I would never hurt Maggie. I would never hurt Paul." His surviving son, Buster Murdaugh, also testified for the defense, describing what he said was a loving family. The whole country was glued to their screens, absolutely captivated by the drama, the raw emotion, and all the crazy details of a case that really pulled back the curtain on the dark side of privilege and power. Then came March 2nd, 2023. After deliberating for less than 3 hours, can you believe it? Less than 3 hours, the jury came back with its verdict. Guilty. Alex Murdaugh was found guilty on all charges, 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of having a weapon during a violent crime. The very next day, Judge Clifton Newman handed down the sentence. 2 life sentences, back-to-back, no chance of parole. During the sentencing, Judge Newman even pointed out the family's long history in the legal world, which just made his downfall seem even more dramatic. For a lot of people, this verdict felt like justice, a powerful family finally being held accountable. But for others, questions still hung in the air. The defense stuck to their guns about the investigation being messed up. One of the jurors, Amy Williams, later said, "We got it right, he's guilty," and she felt Alex Murdaugh was basically slandering the jury with his appeals. And that murder conviction? That was just one piece of Alex Murdaugh's legal nightmare. He's also been sentenced in both state and federal court for all those financial crimes, which just goes to show how deep his deceptions ran. He's been disbarred, and they've seized his assets. But Alex Murdaugh's legal fights? They're nowhere near over. His defense team filed an appeal for the murder conviction, and their big claim was jury tampering. They accused the Colleton County Clerk of Court, a woman named Becky Hill, of making inappropriate comments to the jury, basically hinting that Murdaugh was guilty, and in doing so, robbing him of a fair trial. So they had a hearing about it. Judge Jean Toll listened to the evidence and said, "Yeah, Becky Hill was attracted by the siren call of celebrity and did make some improper comments. But in the end, the judge decided those comments didn't actually sway the jury's verdict, so Murdaugh didn't get a new trial." The South Carolina Supreme Court, though, has agreed to take a look at Murdaugh's appeal of that decision. As of April 2025, the state prosecutors got more time, until August 8, 2025, to respond to the appeal. Murdaugh's lawyers weren't too happy about that, calling it a delay tactic. And just to add another wild twist, Becky Hill herself ended up in legal hot water. In May 2025, she was arrested and hit with 3 felony charges, including perjury and misconduct in office. This came after SLED did its own investigation into her behavior during and after the trial and claims that she misused her job to plug her book about the case. You can bet Alex Murdaugh's lawyers see these charges against Hill as more fuel for their appeal. Meanwhile, the community in South Carolina's Lowcountry was just left reeling. The Murdaugh name used to stand for judicial power, and that classic Southern charm. Now, it's forever stained by murder, corruption, and addiction. This whole case really exposed the cracks in a system where it seemed like influence and money could protect the powerful for so long. It became a total national obsession. There are tons of documentaries, podcasts, and books out there, all trying to figure out the darkness that was hiding behind this prominent family's public image. So Alex Murdaugh is serving his life sentences, but believe it or not, the story doesn't stop there. The Murdaugh saga is tangled up with other mysterious deaths and incidents that are still kicking up speculation and have active investigations going. One of the most haunting loose ends is the 2015 death of 19-year-old Stephen Smith. He was found dead on a rural road in Hampton County. At first, they called it a hit and run, but even the first people on the scene said his injuries didn't quite match that story. Some even thought he might have been shot. For years, rumors flew around the community about possible ties to the Murdaugh family, particularly Buster Murdaugh, though Buster has strongly denied having anything to do with Smith's death. Then in June 2021, thanks to information SLED picked up while investigating Maggie and Paul's murders, they officially reopened Stephen Smith's case. Fast forward to March 2023, and SLED announced they were treating Smith's death as a homicide. By early 2025, you could see billboards across South Carolina offering a bigger reward, now $50,000, for information that leads to an arrest in Stephen's case. His family, with their attorney Eric Bland, is desperate for answers and justice. Investigators have said they know of several people who have important information, but they're waiting for someone to actually step up. A rape kit taken when Smith died is now with SLED, but people are debating how relevant it actually is. And get this, Buster Murdaugh has actually filed defamation lawsuits against a few media companies because of docuseries that he says falsely hinted he was involved in Smith's death. As of June 2025, a federal judge is letting those lawsuits move forward. And then there's Gloria Satterfield, the Murdaugh's housekeeper and nanny for many years, who died in 2018. Alex Murdaugh said she had a trip and fall accident at their Moselle estate. What happened next is just awful. Alex allegedly cooked up a scheme to steal millions in insurance money, over $4.3 million, that was supposed to go to Satterfield's sons. Can you believe it? He actually told her sons to sue him, pointed them to his buddy and lawyer Corey Fleming, and then secretly diverted the settlement money through a fake bank account. Alex Murdaugh has since pleaded guilty to these financial crimes, and Corey Fleming, along with a banker named Russell Lafitte, have also been charged and convicted for their parts in Murdaugh's money schemes, including the Satterfield payout. With all these unresolved cases and ongoing investigations, you can bet the Murdaugh name isn't leaving the headlines anytime soon. How deep do the family's secrets really go? How far did their influence actually reach? And has everyone who did wrong in all these interconnected tragedies truly been held accountable? These are the questions still haunting the Lowcountry. So, the murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh? They weren't just a brutal crime. They were the earthquake that brought down an entire dynasty. They exposed a rotten core of lies and deceit that had been festering for years, maybe even for generations. It's a chilling story of power abused, trust completely betrayed, and lives just shattered beyond repair. Valerie Bauerlein, who wrote a book on this whole saga, put it perfectly. She said, "It's so crazy because it's not just a murder case. It's a multi-generational story about power, privilege, and the darkness that can hide behind a family's public face." Alex Murdaugh is locked up, convicted of the murders and all those financial crimes. But the appeals are ongoing, new charges keep popping up against other people involved, and the shadows of those other deaths still loom large. It feels like the full truth of the Murdaugh family saga might still have a few more chapters to be written. It's a chilling reminder, isn't it, that horror can explode in the most unexpected places, even on a huge family estate, hidden under a layer of Southern charm. The questions definitely linger, and for many, the hunt for complete justice and understanding is a long way from over.